Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. Which of the following statements are correct with respect to Swami Dayananda Saraswati? He founded Arya Samaj, a Hindu reform movement. He stressed on one god and rejected idol worship. He wrote many books. His major contribution is the Karma Yogi. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Let us try and understand what are these options. When we look into the first option is right. Yes, it was Swami Dayananda Saraswati who founded Arya Samaj. It wanted to reform the Hindu society. It was against the caste system that was persisting in India. It was against the untouchability. It wanted to reform the Hindu society as a whole. So the first statement is right. When we look into the second statement, he stressed on one god. He also rejected idol worship. This is also a right statement. In fact, he was the one who also gave the call that let's go back to the Vedas as well. When we look into the third statement, yes, he has written a number of books, and the major book that he has written is not Karma Yogi. Instead, it happens to be Satyartha Prakash. Now let us try and understand some of the important facts with respect to Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He was born into a well-to-do family to a tax collector named Karashanji Lalji Kapadia and his wife Yashodabai. He learned Sanskrit and Vedas in his childhood. He didn't want to enter the process of marriage and wanted to live a spiritual life as well. And as a result, he started practicing yoga. His teacher happens to be Virajnan Dandesha, and he happens to extol spiritualism and nationalism and appeal to people to fight for the Swarajya as well. He stressed on the importance of education of all children, preached respect and equal rights for the women, and he founded Arya Samaj in the year 1875. He also advocated against the extol position of the priests in Hinduism. He opposed the multiplicity of castes, and he led a prolonged movement against untouchability and advocated for the dilution of caste distinctions. It was he who went for the protection of the widows and also worked for the relief of the victims during the natural or the man-made calamities. He was also a prolific writer as well, and he's written a number of books called as Satyartha Prakash, Sankar Vidhi and Rigveda Bhashyam. These are some of the important factual data with respect to Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. The most common plutonium isotope formed in a typical nuclear reactor is the fissile Pu-239. Plutonium-244 is the most stable isotope of plutonium. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to plutonium-239. Let us try and understand what are these options. When we speak about plutonium, this happens to be a radioactive metallic element. It has an atomic number which is 94. It also has different types of isotopes as well. What do we understand by isotopes? An atom is basically composed of protons and neutrons. It is also surrounded by a cloud of electrons as well. So the protons are positively charged, the electrons are negatively charged, the neutrons carry no charge in themselves. So basically isotopes are those which have the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So the protons will be same but the neutrons will be different. So the isotopes of a chemical element are a group of atoms that have the same atomic number but they have different mass numbers. For example, the main isotopes of plutonium include Pu-238, 239, 240, 241, 242 and 244. Now if you look into this practice question, it says the most common plutonium isotope formed in a typical nuclear reactor is the fissile Pu-239. So Pu-239 happens to be an isotope of plutonium, and this happens to be the most common plutonium isotope formed in a typical nuclear reactor. So the first statement is right. When we look into the second statement, yes, plutonium-244 is the most stable isotope of plutonium. So remember, nearly all plutonium is man-made and it is used in the nuclear reactors. And from the preliminary examination point of view, also remember the location of Chernobyl. Where is it? It is on the northern part of Ukraine. Remember, we have one of the days called as International Chernobyl Disaster Remembrance Day. This is celebrated every year on April 26. So remember, on April 26 every year we celebrate what is called as International Chernobyl Disaster Remembrance Day, which was established by the United Nations General Assembly in memory of Chernobyl disaster that happened in the year 1986. So remember, Chernobyl is on the northern part of Ukraine. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to ammonia, which of the following statements are correct? Ammonia is the second largest chemical product produced in the world behind sulfuric acid. Majority of ammonia produced is used in agriculture as a fertilizer. Ammonia is used in wastewater treatment, used as an anesthetic, and in the manufacture of plastics. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to disruption in fertilizer supply, and one of the key components for the production of fertilizers happens to be ammonia. Let us try and understand what are these options. When we look into ammonia, yes, the first statement is right because it is the second largest product produced in the world behind sulfuric acid. So the first statement is right. Majority of the ammonia produced is used in agriculture as a fertilizer. And when we look into the third statement, ammonia is used in the wastewater treatment. This is the right statement and is used in the manufacture of plastics. It is also right, but it is not used as an anesthetic because it does not have any narcotic effects. So remember, it is not used as an anesthetic, but it is used in wastewater treatment. It is used in the manufacture of plastics, which is why the third statement is wrong. And the answer to this would be 1 and 2 only. What are the applications or the uses of ammonia? Ammonia is used extensively in several industries. It is used as stabilizer, neutralizer, source of nitrogen to carry out several functions. It is used in wastewater treatment, leather, rubber, paper, food and beverage industries. It is used as cold storage or refrigeration systems. It is used in the production of pharmaceuticals, and ammonia is also used in printing as well as the cosmetic industries. It is also used in fermentation as well. Ammonia is also used in agriculture industries. About 90% of all ammonia produced is used in this particular field. Ammonia is also one of the main ingredients in lot of households cleaning products as well. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which amongst the following statements is the best description of snapback mechanism? A process created by Council of Europe for the legal protection of human rights, a procedure introduced by United States to unilaterally reimpose sanctions on Iran, Security Council resolution to hold Russia accountable for its aggression against Ukraine, a procedure introduced by Quad to advance a free and open Indo-Pacific. Which of the statements is the best description of snapback mechanism? The answer to this is a procedure introduced by United States to unilaterally impose sanctions on Iran. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article makes a reference to Iran and United States of America and about sanctions. So what is this snapback mechanism all about? Back in the year 2015, we had the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, US, China, Russia, France and Britain, along with Germany, entered into negotiations with Iran. They also signed what is called as Iran nuclear deal as well. What was this deal all about? There were sanctions that was imposed on Iran. These sanctions will be eliminated, will be lifted off, but Iran also has to promise not to develop nuclear weapons. This is what is called as Iran nuclear deal. But in this particular point, United States of America also brings in what is called as the snapback clause or the snapback mechanism. What does this mean? It means if all of a sudden Iran goes ahead with the development of the nuclear weapons, in such a case all the sanctions can be imposed by United States of America and there will be no veto power given to other powers, that is other countries, as part of the negotiation, which is called as the snapback mechanism. So what is the snapback mechanism? Basically, if Iran withdraws and conducts its nuclear activities, United States of America need not have to listen to the other partners who are part of this agreement and ultimately can impose sanctions, reimpose sanctions on Iran, which is what is called as the snapback mechanism. So in this particular article, it is speaking about Iran and United States of America and sanctions which is why we have taken this practice question. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Indian judiciary, consider the following statement. Any retired judge of the Supreme Court of India can be called back to sit by the Chief Justice of India with prior permission of the President of India. A High Court in India has the power to review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is both 1 and 2. When we look into the first statement, yes, the Chief Justice of India can request a retired judge of the Supreme Court to act as a judge of the Supreme Court, but this will require the previous consent of the President. So the first statement is right. When we look into the second statement, a High Court in India has the power to review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. This is also the right statement. So both 1 and 2 are right, and this happens to be a previous year question from the year 2021. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is about Lachit Borphukan, and this happens to be an article taken from the Indian Express. Let us try and understand some of the key facts and achievements with respect to Lachit Borphukan. Who is Lachit Borphukan? He happens to be an army general from Assam. He was born to Mumai Tamuli Borbua and Kunti Moran. Borbua was a designation. It was created by Pratap Singha, who happens to be an Ahom king. Basically, Borbua here is nothing but governor and commander-in-chief of the Ahom army. Because his father happened to be the commander-in-chief of the Ahom army, he had a comfortable upbringing. His father arranged for all his education. He went through education in humanities, scriptures and military science, and ultimately took up a lot of responsibility when it comes to military affairs as well as governance. Before Lachit Borphukan became the commander of the Ahom army, he held positions like the superintendent of the stable of royal horses, superintendent of royal household guards before being appointed as the commander of the Ahom army. And one of the important battles that he took the responsibility, took the Ahom dynasty to the victory doors, happens to be the Battle of Saryagat. What is this Battle of Saryagat? He is remembered for his extraordinary victory against the Mughal army. It was he who fought against the Mughal army headed by Ram Singh in the Battle of Saryagat, like Shivaji, who was able to fight against the expansionist policies of the Mughal Empire in Maharashtra, the present state of Maharashtra. It was Lachit who was able to fight against the expansionist policies of the Mughal in the present state of Assam. So basically, he was able to curb the expansion of the Mughal Empire in Assam. And such a battle where he fought against the expansionist policies of the Mughal Empire is what is called as the Battle of Saryagat. So this was fought in the year 1671. What exactly happened? This was a fight between the Mughals and the Ahom kingdom on the Brahmaputra river at Saraygat, which is now present in Guwahati. When you consider the numbers, you had the Mughal army, which had the huge numbers as well. They also had the technological upgradation as well. They had vast number of people who were fighting for the Mughal army. But how did the Ahom kingdom fight the largely superior numbers when it comes to the Mughal army? That is because of the brilliant use of the terrain, because of the diplomatic negotiations, because of the guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, military intelligence, and by exploiting the weaknesses of the Mughal army, which happens to be the navy. Navy was the major problem for the Mughal Empire, and because they were able to resort to guerrilla tactics and because they hit on the weak point of Mughal Empire, that is the navy, they were able to win the Battle of Saryagat. So remember, we had the Battle of Saryagat, which was fought between the Mughals and the Ahom kingdom, and finally it was the victory of the Ahom kingdom. Lachit Borphukan became victorious. The Mughals were forced to retreat from Guwahati, and the Mughals were pursued to Manas River, the Ahom kingdom's western boundary. The Borphukan instructed his men not to attack the retreating army, and he finally died in the year 1672. And as part of his heroics, on 24th November each year, Lachit Divas is celebrated statewide in Assam to commemorate the heroism of of Lachit Borphukan and the victory of the Assamese army at the Battle of Sariagat. Lachit Divas is celebrated to promote the ideals of Lachit Borphukan, the legendary general of Assam's history. The best cadet from the National Defence Academy is also awarded Lachit Borphukan Gold Medal. It was first instituted in 1999 following an announcement made by General V.P. Malik. These are some of important facts with respect to Lachit Borphukan. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.